Your kettle takes longer to boil than it used to, and there are white flakes floating in your tea. Your showerhead sprays in 10 different directions, with half of the little holes shooting sideways. The faucet in the bathroom has a crusty white ring around the tip where the water comes out. You have scrubbed at all of it, and the hard, chalky white crust barely even seemed to notice. Maybe you bought a special Descaler for the kettle, and a different spray bottle for the shower. They worked for a little while, but the white buildup came right back within a few short weeks. So you have started to wonder whether the kettle and the showerhead are simply wearing out. But long before there was a separate bottle of Descaler for every single appliance in the house, people kept their kettles, their taps, and their pipes clear of scale with something from the kitchen. No special bottle for each item, no scrubbing your knuckles raw, no replacing what still works fine. Just an understanding of what that white crust really is, and one cheap thing that dissolves it. In the next few minutes, I'll show you exactly what Limescale is and why it keeps coming back. Why scrubbing and buying separate Descalers is the wrong approach and the forgotten way to clear it. And no, you do not need a new kettle or a new showerhead. You just need to dissolve the scale. We are going to do this in 2 parts, and the order of them matters more than you might think. First, we take the scaled-up kettle, showerhead, and faucets you have now and get them clear. Then we set up a simple habit so the scale never gets the chance to build up like that again. Because the second part, the part that almost everyone skips, is the part that really decides whether the buildup comes creeping back in a month or stays away for a very long time. And here is the good news right up front. The thing that dissolves it costs just a few cents a use. Let me start by naming what you are actually looking at, because it is not really dirt at all. That hard, chalky white crust is not grime, and no amount of ordinary scrubbing will ever lift it. It is a mineral deposit left behind by your own water, and it has a name. It is called limescale. Most people assume a crusty kettle or a weak showerhead just needs a harder scrub or a new part. So they scrub until their hands ache, or they give up and buy a replacement they never actually needed. The real cause is the water itself, and whether you get this depends a lot on where you live. In many areas, the tap water is what we call hard, which means it is rich in dissolved minerals. Those minerals are mostly calcium and magnesium, picked up as the water moved through rock underground. You cannot see them at all while they are dissolved, but they do not simply disappear on their own. When that water sits and dries out, or when it is heated, the minerals come out and stay behind. They harden onto the kettle element, into the showerhead holes, and around the tips of the faucets. That chalky layer is those minerals, left behind again and again, slowly building up over time. It is the very same white crust you see on glass shower doors and around the base of a tap. So you are not fighting dirt here, and you are not fighting a broken or worn-out appliance. You are fighting a mineral rock, quietly deposited by hard water, and rock is exactly what we will dissolve. Before we go any further, I put together a small book of these forgotten home methods, the cheap, simple fixes that actually last, and it is linked below if you would like it. And that is the only time I will bring it up until the very end, so let us get back to the scale. Here is the part that most quick tip videos are far too comfortable skipping right past. Walk down the cleaning aisle at any store and you will find a separate product for every scaled-up thing. There is a Descaler for the kettle, a spray for the shower, and a lime remover for the taps. Each one comes in its own bottle with its own label at its own price that you pay again and again. But turn most of those bottles around and read the ingredients, and you will find the very same thing. The active ingredient is almost always a mild acid, and very often it is simply citric acid. That is the same citric acid that gives a lemon its sour taste, quietly sold back to you in a bottle. You are buying 4 different labels for what is really one cheap ingredient you could keep in a jar, and the worst response of all is to give up and replace a kettle or a showerhead that still works. There is nothing actually wrong with the appliance. Its holes and its element are just buried in scale. Clear that scale away, and the same old kettle or showerhead works exactly as it did when it was new. What looks like a worn-out appliance is very often just a working one wearing a thick coat of scale. Now let us actually clear it, and the whole method comes down to one simple idea. Acid dissolves it. Limescale is an alkaline mineral, and a mild acid reacts with it and quietly breaks it down to nothing. You have two cheap choices here, and both of them have been used for this job for a very long time. The first is plain white vinegar, which is a mild acid and which you very likely already have at home. The second is citric acid powder, the same acid from lemons, sold cheaply as a small bag of crystals. Citric acid is a little gentler on shiny finishes, and it leaves far less of a lingering smell than vinegar. When either one touches the scale, you will often see it fizz softly as the mineral begins to dissolve. That gentle fizzing is the acid reacting with the crust, turning the hard rock into something you can rinse. You are not scrubbing the scale off with force, you are dissolving it away with simple chemistry. And because it dissolves rather than scrapes, it reaches deep inside holes that a brush could never touch. It flows right into the tiny nozzles of a showerhead and down into the pits of a kettle element. It works on the buildup you can see and the buildup hidden down inside, where the water actually flows. This is exactly why the old approach beats scrubbing every time, and why it is so much gentler on everything. So let us go through it for the three things that scale up the most: the kettle, the shower, and the taps. Start with the kettle, because it is the easiest of the three, and the results are the most dramatic. Fill it about halfway with equal parts water and plain white vinegar, or water with a spoon of citric acid. Bring it just up to a boil, then switch it off and let that hot solution sit for 20 or 30 minutes. As it sits, the acid works its way down into the scale on the element and loosens it from the metal. Pour the solution out, and much of the crust will pour away with it, or wipe off easily with a cloth. Then, and this part really matters, fill the kettle with fresh water, boil it, and pour that away too. Do that rinse boil once or twice more, so there is no trace of acid left before you make your next cup of tea. That is the whole kettle, done for a few cents, with no special Descaler bottle involved at all. Now for the shower head, and there is a wonderfully simple old trick for this particular one. You do not even need to take it down off the wall to get right into every clogged little hole. Fill a small, sturdy plastic bag about halfway with vinegar, or with a citric acid solution. Raise the bag up around the shower head so that the whole head is fully submerged in the liquid. Hold it in place with a rubber band or a twist tie looped over the neck of the shower arm. Leave it there for at least 30 minutes, or overnight for a head that is very badly scaled. Take the bag off, run the hot water for a minute, and watch the spray slowly come back to life. For any stubborn holes that remain, scrub the face gently with an old toothbrush while the water runs. If your shower head has soft rubber nozzles, just rub your thumb across them and the scale pops right off. The same head that dribbled and sprayed sideways now runs straight and strong, just like it used to. The faucets are the last piece, and they scale up right at the spot where the water leaves the spout. Soak a paper towel or a cloth in vinegar, wrap it around the crusty tip, and leave it there to sit. Wrap the handles too, if they have a white ring quietly building up around the base of them. After about half an hour, unwrap it and wipe, and the softened scale should come away quite easily. At the very tip of most faucets is a small screw-on piece called the aerator, with a fine screen inside. That little screen clogs up with scale and grit, which is very often why the flow has grown so weak. Unscrew it, soak it in vinegar for a while, and clear the tiny holes with a toothpick or an old brush. Screw it back on, and the strong, even flow that you remember comes right back where it belongs. There is a good reason that vinegar and lemon have been the answer to scale for so many generations. Long before a shelf of Descalers ever existed, people boiled vinegar in their kettles and copper pots. They knew that something sour cut cleanly through the chalky crust that hard water always left behind. They did not need the chemistry explained to know that an acid dissolves that particular kind of mineral. That simple reaction has not changed one bit, and it still works in exactly the same way today. What changed is that the same cheap acid got divided up into a dozen bottles with a dozen labels. The forgotten version is 1 jar of citric acid, or 1 bottle of vinegar. for the entire house. It is not a weaker method at all. It is the same chemistry, without paying for the packaging 4 times over. Now, let me be honest about where this method does not belong, because acid is simply not for everything. Never use vinegar, or any acid, on natural stone like marble, granite, or travertine surfaces. A mild acid will etch and dull that kind of stone, and that particular damage does not come back. So keep the acid to the kettle, the shower head, the taps and glass, and well away from stone and tile. Be careful with delicate or coated metal finishes too, and test a hidden spot first if you are unsure. Do not leave metal parts soaking in acid for hours on end, because a very long soak can dull some finishes. Always unplug an electric kettle before you clean it, and rinse it out well with fresh water afterward. Never mix vinegar or any acid together with bleach, because that combination makes a genuinely dangerous gas. Open a window if the vinegar smell is strong, though it does fade quickly once you rinse everything down. Citric acid is food safe, but it can still sting your eyes, so keep it out of them and away from children. None of this is dangerous when you take a little care, and most of it is as simple as soaking and waiting. Respect the few surfaces that acid can harm, and this is one of the gentlest cleaning jobs in the whole house. Quick question for you while we are all here together on the subject of hard water. Tell me down in the comments whether your water is hard where you live and where the scale builds up worst. Now let us talk about cost, because this is where one cheap jar really pulls ahead of the whole shelf. A kettle Descaler, a shower spray, and a lime remover each cost a few dollars, and you buy them again and again. Buy all 3 and replace them as they run out, and it quietly adds up more and more year after year. Now compare all of that to a single bag of citric acid, which costs very little and lasts for many cleanings. A large bottle of plain white vinegar is only a few dollars, and it handles 100 other jobs around the house. Between just those 2, you have a Descaler for every surface in the home for the price of 1 small bottle. So for just a few cents each time, and no separate product for each item, you clear the scale everywhere. One path is 4 bottles that you keep on rebuying, the other is 1 jar of powder from your own cupboard. And prices vary by where you live, of course, but that basic comparison does not really change at all. So here is exactly what to do. Spread out so that it never becomes one big dreaded chore. This weekend, descale the kettle with the vinegar boil and hang the vinegar bag on the shower head. While those 2 soak, wrap the faucet tips, and by the time you are finished, the hard part is already over. From then on, the whole trick is to stop the water from sitting and drying long enough to leave scale. After a shower, a quick wipe or squeegee of the glass keeps that cloudy film from ever forming at all. Dry around the faucet and the sink after use, so the minerals never get the chance to harden there. Give the kettle a quick vinegar boil every month or so before the scale can build up thick again. A light film of scale rinses away in minutes, while a thick crust takes a long soak to shift. If your water is very hard, a simple filter or a water softener can slow the buildup right at the source. That is the real secret here. Small, regular attention always beats one big, crusty, once-a-year battle. Scale only turns into that thick, stubborn rock when the water is left to dry and deposit, over and over. Catch it early and often, and the kettle, the shower, and the taps simply never crust up on you again. Notice that almost every step here is really about keeping surfaces dry, not about scrubbing them harder. Scale needs standing water left to dry, so a wiped, dry surface simply has nothing left to deposit. The deeper lesson here is not really about kettles and taps at all when you stop and think about it. It is about understanding what a problem actually is before you reach for a product to fight it with. Once you know the white crust is only a mineral, the answer is a cheap acid, not a shelf full of sprays. Dissolve the cause instead of scrubbing at the symptom. Keep it dry instead of battling the buildup later. Understand the problem instead of just buying a bottle for it, and let simple chemistry do the real work. Do this once, and then keep it up lightly, and your kettle, your shower, and your taps stay clear for good. Pour a cup of clear water, step under a strong shower, and simply forget that scale was ever a problem. The white crust was never a sign that anything was broken. It was only a mineral left behind by your water. Dissolve it once. Wipe things dry. And that chalky buildup quietly becomes a thing of the past. If this changed how you think about that crusty kettle and shower head, subscribe to The Forgotten Method, where every single week we bring back a practical old method that still works beautifully today. Tell me down in the comments which part of your home has been giving you the most trouble lately, because it just might end up becoming the subject of the very next video on this channel, and the full collection of these forgotten household methods is waiting in the book linked below. That is the very last time I will mention it to you, exactly as I promised near the beginning. Next, on The Forgotten Method, we look at the old way to whiten stained tile grout and stop black mildew, without a bleach pen or a harsh chemical, using a simple paste and one small change of habit. Sometimes the method we need most is simply the one that we quietly forgot along the way.